You are listening to The Michael Lodge Show. Wealth, business, and taxes. Oh yeah, and some politics. Let's get started.
Okay, so we are going to get started here. Good morning, this is Mike Lodge. I'm glad that you have joined me. I have been working all morning. I almost forgot to do this podcast because I'm running a series on my vlogs that I write every day. And I'm writing about starting a business, how to start a business. And I'm in step 3 at the moment. And I got so engulfed into what I was doing that I almost forgot to do this podcast. So I'm sorry I'm late. I should have done this early this morning. It's now 9:35 in the morning. And usually I do it about 6:30, 7 in the morning. So I'm late. So on yesterday's podcast, we talked about, and I told you that we were going to do a life series. And we were going to talk about all the aspects of life as we're going through life, and the decisions that we make, and the questions that we should be asking, and looking at the various aspects of life that we really need to take care of. So yesterday I talked briefly about death, and I should have left that until the end. In fact, we're going to talk about it more at the end. But today we're going to start at the very beginning, and that is when you're an adult and you are considering to get married. And that's a big decision that is put in front of many Americans. Some decide to stay single, and others decide, you know what, I really want to have a significant other that I can call my mate, that I can call my friend, that I can call my partner in life. And there are some questions that when you start looking at marriage that you really need to ask each other. And they're vital questions. Now, many of you don't know this, but I perform marriages. I'm a marriage officiant, and I think for 2021, I've done maybe 40 or 45 weddings in Florida, when I was down in Florida. And I always ask them, do you want premarital counseling? Do you want to come in and we can talk about the various questions of what we need to talk about as functioning partners in this contract that you're going to sign, the marriage contract? Don't you think there's something that we need to talk about? And I encourage you to come and talk to me. Some took me up on it and some said, no, we just want to get it done. We don't want any family there. We don't want anything. The other thing that concerned me is when I was doing marriages, I would say that 99% of the individuals wanting to get married wanted no God included in the marriage ceremony. They didn't want any mention of it. They didn't want to talk about it. All they wanted to do was get married. Now, I'm a Christian, and I am bold-faced about being a Christian. And I believe that marriage has to have God included. Because that is where you go for counsel on having a very successful marriage. When I went to school, when I went to college, every one of us had to take this class. And we didn't get any credit for it, but we had to take it. And it was called Marriage and Family Life. And we went through all the aspects of marriage. Now, you have to realize that when I was going to college, I was going to a private Christian college up in Walla Walla, Washington, way out in the wheat fields of the state of Washington, in the onion fields of Washington. We were required to take this. And the reason why is because we had such a big amount of students who were taking the seminary. They were preparing to enter the ministry. And a lot of nurses, a lot of education people, so all of these individuals were deciding at some point in time, because at that time it was unheard of anybody being single and entering the ministry. I mean, that was a big deal. So about spring break, It was a tradition. It was a tradition. And all of these guys began asking all these women to marry them. And you could tell because there was a tradition that if you asked someone to marry a female and they said yes, the guys in Sitner Hall would get up in the middle of the night, go in and confiscate the poor guy who asked to be married, and they bundled him up, they took him forcefully, and they went over to the girls' dorm where they had a pond in there. Now, you got to realize that up in Washington, the Walla Walla, it gets cold there, and there's ice on water. And they would throw this guy into this pond, and sometimes they would break the ice. And sometimes you could tell that the guy had just passed by because his footprints were frozen on the cement. That was the tradition. I don't know if they have that tradition yet, but that was a tradition back then. And so the college felt that every individual that attended the school needed to have a class in marriage and family life. And it was taught by a really good teacher. And I was happy that I had taken it because it gave you a rounded version of, and sometimes a vision of what marriage was going to be about. And I really feel that every school, no matter what, even if they're non-Christian schools, should provide a course in marriage and family life. It's better if it's gospel driven or God driven, because then you're getting a good view of what a Christian family should be about. But even then, everybody should be prepared and understand what issues need to be talked about prior to saying I do. Or even after saying I do. But it needs to be asked, because if things are going bad, you can still end the process of getting to that next step and calling me and saying, will you please marry me? So there are issues and there are questions that we need to ask, and we're going to go through that this morning. One of them, and the most important thing, is on your finances. And the question is, and it's going to be asked because you guys are going to be getting out of college, you're going to have debt, you're going to have car debt, you're going to have a whole student loan debt. The first question that you have to ask is, my debt, your debt. Would you be willing to bail me out? Remember, when you say I do, you are taking on a load of responsibility. And part of that is debt. Part of that is the finances. And the finances is one of the biggest deals. As I'm sitting in mediating divorces at the very end of a marriage, it's usually it's the strongest and the meanest and the ugliest conversations that I hear and I have to mediate is about finances. Because finances place a huge amount of stress on any marriage and even on any individual. So the first and foremost question is about your finances. You need to talk about the money issue. Money is the number one source of relationship stress between couples, even on individuals. It places a lot of stress on you. So being on the same page early on is so crucial. It's so important. Asking about financial goals is a lot more positive than saying, how come you never seem to pay your bills on time, but splurge on delivery 3 nights a week? So ask what your goals are, both of you. Future husband, what is your financial goal? Future wife, what is your financial goal? How are you going to participate in that financial goal? It's definitely a big sore spot, and it's a lot of conversation. Sometimes it's angry conversation between couples on their finances. So diving into the conversation of debt and spending and saving, you have to ask questions like, how do you expect to share the expenses? Do you have gender-based financial expectations? I hate that word, gender-based. I would say this is partner-based. You now become, when you say I do, you are partners. Will we merge our accounts? How will we prioritize spending? And that's why I talk to every single couple that I try to get my hands on. Sit down and do your budgets. You know what both of your incomes are coming in. You know what your expenses are going out. You know what your debt is. Work it through. And if your money isn't enough, then you got to start cutting on your expenses. But remember that house, food, shelter, electricity, food is very important. Those are the number one items you have to focus on. All the extras that you want, the Hulu accounts, the Netflix accounts, perhaps you don't need them. If your money source isn't strong enough to support extra things, stop it, because I'd much rather see you saving instead of fighting over expenses. So you want to start a conversation in a good sense of whether the two of you are financially compatible or even capable. Not in terms of how much you earn, but in how you view and manage money. That's why I talk so much, and even on my daily podcast and in my vlogs, I talk about setting your goals and setting your budgets. Like right now, we're ending 2021, right? You should be sitting down and putting together your 2022 budgets. That's financial management. And if you have already said I do, sit down and do it together, because at one point in time when you say I do and you're in front of me and I say you're man and wife, that's when your financial obligations begin together. Plan ahead of time. Sit down right now and prepare your budgets for 2022. Even if you're single, do it. Do it. I hate to have these conversations when I'm in divorce mediation or separation mediation. And the problem of money occurs, and I got to sit down and work out the budget. Every single divorce, I have to work out the budget. Because there are things, even after marriage, that you've got to share, especially if you have children. Sit down, my friends, and ask the questions. Right now, while you still have the time and ability, sit down and work out your budget as if you're getting married. And make sure that that budget is in place when you do say I do, because that's going to be a stress level that can break any marriage, no matter how strong you are. The other issue is, ask the question, because you're going to be stressed, okay? Work stress, you're going to have family stress, you're going to have friendship stress, you're going to have money stress. Ask the question, how can I help you when you're stressed? Get to know this person. As you're going through this pre-marriage thing, walk of life, if you want to call it, you're going to be faced with stress. Find out how that individual handles stress. Ask the questions on future families. Do you want children? What would we do if we struggle to get pregnant? Ask those types of questions. What are your expectations around childcare and parenting? What's your communication style? Biggest problem that I see in divorce mediation is communication. I got to teach them all over again on how to communicate. Because some of you like to go on and on and on. What should have been 25 words or less becomes a book. Be precise in your communication. Get right to the point. Don't go off into tangent stories because that just creates more stress. What is your communication style? And if you need help working on communication, sit down with a marriage counselor or sit down with a minister and talk about communication because that's so important. It's so important. I tell you, I get into some very sticky situations in divorce mediation, and it gets heated. It gets ugly. And so I have to work with each one on a one-on-one basis because they have learned that they want to strike out. They want to do damage to the other individual. They want to hurt the other individual. When what they should be doing is, what is the issue? How do we resolve it? And let's move on. If you've had children, by the time you go through divorce, that child is going to feel your anger. You may not think he is, but he is. And you might think, oh, he's adjusting well. No, he's not adjusting. He's coping. And your anger, through your words, makes stress on that coping process. You have got to learn how to communicate better. You should also ask the question, what are the deal breakers of this marriage? What are they? What are deal breakers? Every one of us, I even have deal breakers. They might be about traditional issues, whether you want children, what religion you want them to be raised, what you need from a partner, but they can also look totally different for every individual. Your deal breakers could be about what you need to, or where you need to live, passion projects you want to pursue, or career goals you need support to meet. Knowing these non-negotiables will give you a goal sense in the landscape of your future and whether it works for both of you. If your deal breakers fit together, your marriage has a much stronger chance of survival. A lot of times, I have seen in mediation where these deal breakers were never discussed, and they built into a conflict. They built into a dispute, and it destroyed the marriage. You need to know what those negotiables are and the unnegotiables are. One of the other questions that I think is important is, how much alone time do you need? I know that's one of those. Why would anybody want to be alone? Why would they want to be away from me? I just said I do. I love you. I want to be with you. I'm telling you, sometimes people grate on people's nerves if there's too much togetherness. I hate to say that, but it happens. If there's too much, they grate on your nerves. I remember I had these friends, and he was a doctor, a very prominent doctor, and she was a doctor's wife. And they were always busy. They were involved in everything. Every social occasion they were invited to. He went to his practice every morning and did his thing, came home at night. She was off in her things and clubs and putting together charitable events, everything. I mean, they were always busy. But then there came that time where they were going to retire. And he began to ease off on going into his practice. He brought in a new doctor to begin working his patients. And the husband and wife began spending more and more time together. And chaos broke out. It became so bad that they had to go into counseling. And one of the things that they brought up in counseling, the wife said, you know what? I have been a doctor's wife, and I'm so afraid that when he's no longer a doctor, everything will end. These are the types of questions that we need to ask and we need to plan for. There has to be some alone time. There's got to be some time when you're going out fishing with the guys, or you're working on cars together as guys, or you're going to birthday parties as girls, and you're going to night out at the opera with the girls. I mean, because guys are not going to go to the opera, okay? I am dreading, let me tell you something, I am dreading the Christmas season because they play that stupid Nutcracker thing. And everybody invites me to it, and it's hard to say no, but I'm beginning to say no to the Nutcracker because I'm freaking tired of it. I need my alone time. Think about those questions, okay? The other question that you should think about is, what are your biggest fears? What are your biggest fears? It might not be an easy question, and it certainly isn't an easy question. I ask myself that all the time. What is my biggest fears of accomplishing whatever it may be? But it's one that can get you right to the bottom of what makes someone tick-tock. Marriage is about understanding, and not just understanding your hopes and your dreams and your ambitions. It's also about understanding fears and regrets and struggle, especially in relation to marriage. Make sure that you're asking the tough questions, and your marriage will have deeper meaning. There may be some of you who are going through therapy alone, because you've had a trauma in your past life. Ask yourself, how is that trauma going to affect this marriage? Don't dive into this marriage knowing that you have this trauma, that you haven't resolved this trauma, but you need to work on this trauma. And your partner needs to know what that trauma is and how you're working on it. And is he going or she going to support you on it? The other question is in-laws. My gosh. I have mediation sessions where the in-laws try to get involved, and they should not be involved. And that is what really caused the issues, because the in-laws wanted to set the rules. So how do you deal with your in-laws or your future in-laws? Listen, when you try to create a new family, it's necessary to set boundaries regarding in-laws and families. There's a lot of people who are still attached to their family of origin in a way where they feel like they're a little kid trying to please their family. And if you're still trying to do that, if your in-laws are so into your business, you're going to have problems. I see it in divorce all the time where in-laws try to get involved. It's a big time problem. Understand, boundaries are not bad. Boundaries are what set the rules of relationships with people who want to be involved in everything that you're doing. You have to cut that at some point in time. Become an adult and not a child. Because that is going to place stress. If you're still that child of that family, and the family still sees you as that child, and not as an adult and a decision maker, you are going to have problems. Now, the other issue in marriage and planning for marriage and the questions that you ask about marriage with the other partner, what are your fantasies surrounding this marriage? I know you guys are sick and you like fantasies. They're out there, right? But do you have any fantasies about what you're looking for in this marriage you're about to say I do? In your partnership that you're entering into? What are your fantasies surrounding marriage is a question you should also ask. It's important. Your partner might envision having nightly home-cooked meals, weekly date nights, regular travels, or acting as a unit in social situations, but that might not be what you want. Be aware of each other's marital fantasies to avoid surprises and disappointments after the wedding. Some of you married opposites, and some of you married way too far opposites. Ask the question, what are your fantasies surrounding this marriage? And let's talk about it. What are your expectations about sex? Partners may have different views on how often sex should happen within marriage, and it's important to honestly explore expectations on intimacy. That's part of the conversation around the relationship. What the expectations and fantasies are around that, especially given it changes around the course of your relationship. There are seasons when it's really hot, and then there are seasons when it's really dry. Assure each other that less sexual activity, especially during those dry seasons, doesn't mean each other that less sexual activity, especially during the dry seasons, doesn't mean you lost interest in your spouse. Collaborate in exploring other ways to be intimate. I just talked a few minutes ago about what has happened in your life, and maybe you're going through therapy. I had one couple where they admitted that the guy could not have sex to him, just wasn't important anymore. And as we got into it, I found out that when he was young, he had been raped by an uncle. Sex wasn't important to him because he hadn't gone through the therapy process of talking about what had happened to him. So to him it was dirty. To him it was something that wasn't natural. This happens on women's sides too, especially more in women because some of them have been raped. Some of them have gone through sexual trauma with some type of a family member or friend or whatever. Sex is very important in marriage. But if there is an issue up front that the other partner needs to know about, be honest, because they can work it through with you. And they're probably the best therapists you have. You can never buy, because they understand the situation. They understand what you have lived through. And then go out and get some help. There's no problem in getting help. I encourage it. Sometimes I wonder if I don't need help. Sometimes as I get older, my senility is getting worse and worse. I look at my dog Skippy, who's old also, and sometimes I find him staring off into the outer space. He's literally not even thinking or even doing anything. He's just sitting there on his hindquarters and just looking out into space. And I've caught myself doing the same thing. Life is funny, isn't it? So, the final question, the very final question that you should be asking, and you probably have other questions that you should ask, but you know what those are. But one of the things that you need to ask yourself is, what does marriage mean to you? Marriage doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Some people think it's almost all-consuming partnership, but some people think it's a legal agreement. Talking about your expectations can help make sure that neither of you has needs or expectations that aren't being met. You can feel like you're approaching the next chapter together. Ask the question, what does marriage mean to you? Make sure you're on the same page. And if you're not, talk about it some more. Talk to your minister. Talk to outside marriage counseling. Listen, a lot of people of you out there think that I don't need to talk to anybody. Yeah, sometimes you do. Sometimes you need to sit down and hear a third-party opinion. And so that's what mediation is for. I do a lot of pre-marriage mediation because a lot of you have assets, a lot of you have all of these notions and stuff, but we need to bring it together and mediate whatever the outstanding issue may be. Because you want to make this marriage last. I think that if you're in California, you might have the mindset that says, you know what, if this doesn't work out, I'll just go to the divorce court and I'll get it done with. I'll get a divorce. Instead of saying, okay, how am I going to work at this and make it a successful marriage? You guys are never asking that question. And these, as I went through these questions, please understand that they need to be asked. Before you say, you know what, Mary or John, will you please marry me? I would love for you to spend the rest of your life with me. You better know what that life is going to be about because you need to ask those questions that we just went through. So this is part 1 of life decision-making process. And in that decision-making process, when you are deciding of whom you are going to ask to marry you, you have to ask some questions. As a mediator, that's all I do is I ask questions. That's my whole responsibility, is to ask the right question and guide individuals to the right direction where they need to be. So I hope that as a mediator today, and as a business guy, I hope that you understand how important it is to ask these questions. Because it gets you onto the right path that you need to go on in marriage. So this is step 1. The first part of your life together in this marriage. And now we're going to go through some other aspects of life together or alone. And we're going to be asking questions. We're going to be thinking about the process of life. Because we have got some responsibilities. I tell you, if you were to look at life when you're young and know about all the responsibilities, I would hope that you would begin to plan early. Because if you've got a plan early in life, you're going to make it through life. You're going to make it through marriage. You're going to make it through business. You're going to make it through your career. You're going to make it. You're going to make it. But ask the questions. Listen, if you like my podcast and you like the content of my vlogs, and if you want to read about all my vlogs that I do every single day, I do a vlog. Go to www.buymeacoffe.com/Michael Lodge, Lodge. Again, that's www.buymeacoffee.com/Michael Lodge. Go there, follow me, help me out. I greatly appreciate it. But all my vlogs are there. Now, as of December 1st, all of those blogs are not going to be free anymore because I'm going to make it into an account where people have to pay for all my great wisdom. And let me tell you, the better the coffee, the better the wisdom. That's just how I work. That's how I roll. Listen, if you have any business questions or mediation questions or any type of question, send it to info@lodge.co.com. Again, that's at lodge.co.com. If you want to know what I do in my day job, go to www.lodge-co.com. So I want everybody to go out there and have a great day. It's going to be fun. You're going to be productive. You've got now a thought process of what happens at the beginning of life when you're deciding to get married. And we're going to talk about other things in the process of life in the next few days. Go to my vlog that I do every single day. It's great. Again, I'll tell you, it's at www.buymeacoffee.com/Michael Lodge. Get some knowledge. It's there. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye. This podcast is brought to you by Michael Lodge, fully focused on content.